Another green screen video? Seriously? I was going to make this into a separate series of short videos so it wasn't so long. Then I received a comment on one of my videos that said, "You talk more than my grandma, now start the topic." So this episode is not only going to be really long, but I am dedicating it to all the grandmas out there. Actually, I wanted to keep all this info in one place. If you're impatient or only want to rewatch a portion of this, I've put the links in the description below. Second, due to some other comments I've received, I feel compelled to state the following. There may be something to learn here, or at least refresh your memory on some basics. If you think you know all about this already, then just go watch something else. Just saying. If I walked onto a set, I would let everyone do their jobs. That's what they were hired for, and are usually better at doing their specific jobs than me. I can't do it all. For green screen scenes, everything is set up properly, it gets shot, then handed over to more people who perform their jobs, and everything looks great. Doing it by yourself is not the same as doing it on a set with a crew of people who already know what they are doing. You are the person who buys all that crap, sets it up, films it, lights it, probably stars in it, edits it, does the compositing, renders it, and posts it. And that's a lot of jobs. Now, I've seen an awful lot of videos on YouTube that were done using a green screen. Some are really excellent. Some really suck, including some of my own. So I figured there's something that these pro guys are doing that non-pro guys aren't, like sound. The first point of failure for sound is bad recording. Everything after bad recording is spending a lot of time to fix it in post, which makes sound recording and editing look like a pain in the ass when in fact, it was a bad recording in the first place that was a fail. So my thought was, what's the first point of failure for green screen work? What makes everything after that point a pain in the ass? So I did a lot of research, talked to some pros, and worked it backwards to see what the first point of failure was. It isn't the software tools, they use the same ones. It isn't the camera or lenses. I've seen pros pull a key from DSLRs and video cameras. It isn't the green screen. I've seen some low-cost green screens and the keying is great. It can't be the lighting. I mean, you buy a green screen kit with a couple of lights, it's supposed to work, right? Let's take one of these cheaper green screen kits, which work fine by the way, and you normally get 2 or 3 lights with it. So you set up your green screen kit, put all your lights, and voila! Except there is no voila. You get your footage into editing, can't figure out what the hell is going on, your keying looks like crap. You mess around with it forever, then give up, decide green screening is just too hard or there's something you don't get, or you decide you need a better camera, lens, room, studio, watch a shit ton of green screening videos, still don't get it and continue down to shoot the green screen hell. Well, it isn't your fault. This is not a green screen kit. It's a 3-point lighting system for your subject, which happens to include a green screen. So there's the first point of failure, lighting the green screen. Notice I didn't say lighting, I said lighting the green screen. Lighting and lighting the green screen are not the same thing. They are 2 completely different lighting steps. You've got to set up the green screen and light it properly, then light your subject the way you normally would. Screw the actors and objects and everything else. Just light the screen properly. In other words, you need to treat your screen and your subject separately. Now, a lot of green screen videos will go along and then briefly say, and make sure you light the green screen evenly so you don't have any hot spots, and then they move on. Well, what the f***? If that's a major point of failure, and it is, why not say how come, why, and how to do it? In talking with pros, 90% of problems pulling a key is usually improper or uneven lighting and hotspots. The other 10% is someone wearing green, shadows on the screen, too much motion, and a few others. That 10% is easy to fix, as we'll cover later. So let's handle this 90%. Now, I'm sure someone watching is saying, but I have lights, and they look awesome. Well, you don't know what you don't know, right? Well, here's a new one. You don't see what you don't see. For example, look at the lighting here. It looks fine, right? It's not. Your eyeballs are awesome and super accommodating. The camera is not. The screen has uneven lighting and hotspots that make it a pain in the ass to pull a key. So let me repeat this. Uneven lighting and hotspots on a green screen are the evil devil child. And just to make sure I really drive this point home, it's the difference between clicking an eyedropper and making a few adjustments, having nice flowing hair, being able to see glass that looks like a glass, and being able to move freely in front of the screen. It's the difference between having fun doing green screen work or spending hours, days, or weeks masking things out, never quite getting it right. So, how do we know we have uneven lighting and hotspots, and more importantly, how do we correct it? One simple method for seeing uneven lighting in hotspots is by adjusting your camera's shutter speed. For example, as I adjust the shutter speed higher and higher, it lets in less light. It makes everything darker. Now you can see the hotspots here and there, and the lighting is uneven. It is not the best or most reliable way by far, but it can be used if you have to use it. It's better than not seeing it at all. My favorite and more trusted way is by the use of an app which looks at your setup like a camera does. I have one called Green Screener. Here's the app on my iPad pointing at my green screen. Now you can really see what's going on. Even if you have those large soft boxes that come with your green screen kit, you're still going to have a problem. And once you see this, you'll start going absolutely insane. These hotspots and uneven lighting is why you have trouble and why it gets complicated. Now you can adjust these lights and mess around with them and end up with something that's somewhat acceptable, but you need to just stop. You'll spend hours messing around with this and adjusting things, and you'll never get it the way you want it. Or you'll just settle with, that's good enough, or I'll fix it in post. When you get there, you'll hate yourself. So we've determined the first point of failure is lighting the green screen. Well, the next point of failure, and the reason you have hotspots and uneven lighting on your green screen, is because you're using the wrong lights. And that's the missing ingredient. You should be using different lights for lighting the screen. That's also why, in my last episode, I showed you those cheap DIY bank lights, which you should go watch right now if you haven't, otherwise you'll miss this important point. So go watch it and I'll wait. Go ahead, you can come back to this video, just go and watch it. There's a link here, you just click on it and you can watch that. Okay, so now you get it on bank lighting and why. So let's set them up. On a screen like this behind me, you'd want maybe 2 bank lights on each side and a couple on top and maybe even the bottom, but to prove my point, we're going to use just 2 of these DIY lights, one on each side. Place your new bank lights on either side of your green screen. You'll want the middle of these lights positioned about the middle of your frame. Get your green screener app up and running. Now take a look. Still hot spots and uneven lighting? Just move the bank lights forward and backward and adjust left to right, and you'll eventually get an evenly lit, no hotspot green screen. Depending on your camera and room, it will take some finesse. Once you practice with the lights and the app, it gets really easy. And if you always shoot in this type of environment like I do, just lock it all down once you've nailed it. Now that we know the screen is evenly lit with no hotspots, let's test out this one-click theory. And I'm going to do the worst thing possible, that is make sure I have some glass in the shot. Even worse, I'm going to use a not-so-awesome Ultra key found in Premiere Pro. I'm not banging on Ultra key, its use is more of a, I want to see what my footage and background will look like before I spend the time to do a real key. Using Ultra key will ensure anyone in using editor can do this. So we're bringing the footage into Premiere Pro. We add the Ultra key plugin to the footage. We click on the green area around me. Bam! Let's add a background. Bam! If there's still a little black mush, select this pull down, select Advanced, and BAM! Not bad, huh? Especially for this type of talking head video, it works nicely, and more importantly, it's quick. Now if you want to mess around with the different parameters in Ultra key and refine all this, go ahead. If you want to do more precise keying, bring the footage into After Effects and use Keylight, which is awesome. Pull the key, you could do that too. It will only be better. As you know, trying to correct rotten footage in post is a royal pain in the butt. It's always better to get that footage shot well up front in camera. Well, now that you have the best possible lighting on your green screen, it will be easy as hell to pull a fast key. Better yet, if you decide to mess around for more complex keying, you won't be wondering, what the hell is wrong? It should just work because you took failure point number 1 out of the mix. Neat, huh? Here's some extra tricks and tips while doing green screen work that will make it even easier when editing. You don't need some super high-end expensive green screen. Here's that simple one I showed earlier that's pretty cheap, comes with lights, and works. Now I don't get why people don't smooth out their green screen. These little bumps and folds will create shadows and make it a pain in the butt to pull a key. You don't need to iron it. You can use clamps to pull the screen taut or use something like these large paper clips. You can also get a small steamer like this if you like, but I found it's better to pull the screen taut with clips. It doesn't have to be totally taut, but at least make sure when it hangs there aren't any creases or bumps that will create shadows or lines. If you stand too close to the green screen, you'll cast a shadow, especially if you didn't pay attention and are trying to use all your lights to let you and the green screen. It gets near impossible to pull a key with shadows. You'll find yourself spending a lot of time dicking around with this. Worse yet, you will get light spilling on your actor called spill, which you don't see until you're in post-editing and is a pain in the butt to key. Here's a way to fix this. Remember, we light the green screen until it's perfect, then we place the subject away from the green screen, say 3 to 5 feet, and light them separately. It's best to be in front of the backlight so they aren't hitting you with light. If you don't have enough room, it might be better to set up in another location than try and deal with shadows. Another trick for small rooms is to make sure your green screen isn't lit darker than your subject, as that will also cast shadows from the subject and their lights. Best is a green screen just slightly darker than the light on your subject. You should use a backlight or hair light, as it really helps pull the subject off the background, and in this case, the green screen. It also sharpens the edges between you and the green screen, making the key easier to pull. I found it's better to use a soft light, such as this one with a diffuser, like the one that came with my cheap green screen kit. Another trick is to use a Magenta Gel on the backlight. That's a gel that looks somewhat pink. Magenta is what you would call minus green gel. In other words, it somewhat cancels out the color. This will cut down on some of the green spill light bouncing onto your subject, making keying even easier. As already covered, you should light your green screen first, then light the subject, including the backlight is already covered. Assuming you are doing that, keep this in mind. There's a rule of thumb that says you should light the subject a couple of stops higher than your green screen. If you're new to this, you spend a lot of time jerking around with that, so let's make this simpler. If you blast your green screen with tons of light, then you get a lot more green spill bouncing off the screen onto your subject, which means when you pull a key, you'll end up with a mess. If you blast your talent with the light and the green screen is really dark and is covered, you get shadows. So just eyeball this. After setting up your green screen and lighting it properly, turn the subject's lights up more, move them closer, or whatever. You just want a nice balance or a green screen a little bit darker than the subject. You may think this is stupid, but don't wear green clothes or things that have green in them. I did an episode where my shirt was laced with green. I did another episode where my Christmas hat had a green leaf on it that I didn't notice. 2 episodes ago, I didn't notice my Starbucks cup had a green logo and a green straw. Both of these were pretty easy to fix, as they were on me or in front of me, as you'll see in a later trick. But it's best just to look in the mirror and see if there's green. It's way easier to not have to deal with these things. What if you have green screen in the shot? Then just use a blue screen and pull the blue as a key instead of the green. Everything else covered here applies and should be just as simple. And note, these keyers, they don't care what color you pull. I've used this to pull someone out of a shot standing in front of a whiteboard. It takes a little more work, but it can be done. I'll leave that to your creativity and imagination on the multiple ways you can use this. With a wide aperture, the background goes more out of focus. You can use this while shooting on a green screen. Since the green screen is now out of focus, it will help even out any inconsistencies from wrinkles or spots. If your subject is moving around a lot, you can get motion blur, which is nearly impossible to key out. There's too much motion here, and the green and the ham will get mushed together. Just up your shutter speed to like 70 or 80, and that will take out the motion blur. This will keep the green and the thing from mushing together, and you'll get a good key. But don't set it too high or it will look weird and unnatural. If the footage looks better with motion blur in it, you can always add motion blur back in later to make it look more realistic. You don't want noise in your shot, as it makes it hell to key, and then you're back to masking stuff. To keep the noise down, keep your ISO low, which is done by proper lighting of the talent or object being shot in front of the green screen. In other words, light the hell out of the subject, light the green screen a bit darker, and adjust your ISO and exposure to the subject, not the green screen. If you're above 800 ISO, you need more light. 320 and 640 will be okay. Before you shoot, just frame everything green, no masking. Or just frame it knowing you're going to upscale a bit in your editor so you don't have to mask anything. Or frame it so the masking is really simple. Of course, you don't want to frame it and have the person lifting their arms out of frame and then put it in some background as a long shot. In this case, just resize the background so it looks like you meant to do that. Just remember to think about your framing before you take the shot. Sometimes when you get your footage in, you find that there's something in the shot that is green, like this straw in your cup. I'm lucky as the straw and cup are in front of me, which makes it easy to fix. Just make a copy of the layer above the current layer, mask out the area that should be green, then remove the keyer, in this case, Ultra Key. If there's a lot of movement, you may have to track the shot or add keyframes to move the mask around as needed. These same principles work in After Effects. For this type of episode, this works really well. I just click and key out quickly and add in my background. I use a sort of three-point lighting consisting of a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Now, there's two methods you can use for lighting. One, you light yourself and find something to put in the background that matches that general lighting or looks good. The other is you know what the background or footage is going to be, so you study the lighting in the shot and light yourself to match that. Both work, and it depends on what you are doing. Feel free to adjust your shot or the background you use to match these up. I already talked about spill from standing too close to the green screen, which you shouldn't do. But I've had many a shot ruin as I didn't take into account the green coming from a place I didn't realize it was coming from. The front. If you have a monitor pointed at you so you can see what's going on, the monitor will have green shooting at your clothes, face, or glasses. If you don't know this, you'll drive yourself mad. The best solution is to turn the monitor off while filming yourself, or change it to display in black and white so you don't get spill. You can also get spill if you have a window behind the camera. Anything between you and everything that way, if it reflects, like a window, monitor, reflector, etc., should be turned off, covered, or taken away. Now, if you decide there should be a shadow on the back wall in your background, add the shadow in afterwards. Here I shot this green screen, added myself in so it looks like I'm close to a wall, and I wanted to cast a shadow to make it look more legit. It's pretty easy to add it in later. Just use your editor, add a shadow effect, and adjust it until it looks right. There are so many ways to get or make backgrounds for your footage, I couldn't possibly list them all. One is using photos or moving video or both. Now, this video is not for people doing heavy motion in large areas. Most people watching this video will be primarily concerned with taking a head or body shot and replacing the background. And most people watching this video are one-man band filmmakers. If you plan on doing these more complicated shots, and these rules will still apply, but I would highly suggest you get someone who has experience doing these complicated shots. They know the ins and outs and usually have the gear or know-how on what you need to pull these off. These are the basic practical concepts when it comes to green screening. If you use a semi-permanent setup like this for this show, it's really easy. You walk in, turn on your lights, get the camera and sound rolling, shoot, bring the footage in, pull the key, place in the background, and you're practically done. The whole point of this video is to make it simple for people who are new, having problems, or who have given up on green screen work. By having the proper lights and lighting, knowing how to see and correct hotspots and uneven lighting, and knowing a few other details, it will save you a lot of time and you'll be able to enjoy this filmmaking tool. Lastly, I don't want someone walking away from this really long video still thinking this is difficult, complex, or hard. So I'm going to include a short example that will show how simple this green screen process can be, from walking into the room and turning on the lights and camera to rendering out the video. Okay, for purposes of the demonstration, I got the sound and camera rolling. There's one of my lights. There's my other light, bank light 1, 2, green screen's lit. There's my fill light, there's my key light, and there's my hair light. We're good. Normally, I'd have this all set up, and I would walk up here. I would start the camera rolling. I would start the sound rolling. And then I'd either snap my fingers or use some fancy gadget like this. Bam! That gives me a mark between my sound and my film so I can get them all together in post. Okay, here we go. I find my mark, which is already set up. I've already set my focus. I don't change my focus. Sometimes I check it. My monitor's on. It is set to black and white so I can see it. So everything's good. So I start my episode and I say whatever I say. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. I don't know what the hell that means. Good. So then I say, cut, just so I know I'm done. I would come over. At this point, I would turn off my sound. I would turn off my camera. I would turn off my lights, and I would go and bring the footage into my computer. So, goodbye. Goodbye, and goodbye hair light, and goodbye key light, and goodbye fill light, and goodbye you, and we'll see you in the editor area. Input the footage and sound files into Premiere Pro. Place the movie on the timeline. Now place the sound file on the timeline. We're going to sync the sound, so let's open them up so we can see them. Click on the good sound file, then shift-click on the movie file with the crappy sound. Right-click and select Synchronize from the menu. Click OK and let Premiere do its thing. Now I trim the edges so everything is even. I play a couple of seconds to make sure all sounds well. I select the crappy movie sound and unlink it from the movie. You can also use Ctrl or Command L as a shortcut. I select and link the good sound file to the movie, delete the crappy camera sound, and move the good sound up just to be tidy. I play a few seconds to make sure all is well. Now I find the start of my pretend episode, trim to that point, and move everything back to 0. Now I find the end of my fake episode and trim the clip to there. I move the movie part of the clip up one to make room for my background, drag my background to the timeline, and line it up to the length of the clip. Next, I scale the clip to take out the edges of the green screen. On longer episodes, I scale first, then I cut to save time. I think 110 looks good and a minor adjust up. And I think I'll adjust it left a bit. Now I go to my keyer by finding the Alter key plugin and drag it to my movie clip. I grab the dropper and click somewhere near me. I click on the default drop-down and select Aggressive. For this type of episode, it looks good enough to me. Now this background looks a bit funny as it's totally in focus. Let's add some depth with a Fast Blur plugin. I drag it to the background and make sure Repeat Edge Pixels is checked. Let's try a blur of 10. That's a bit much. How about 5? Looks good to me. I scrub through and make sure it looks okay. I don't like how far away I look from the back wall, so I'm going to mess with the background's picture scale and position. That looks good to me. I play it to make sure there isn't anything weird going on. Let's render this out. Now I choose File, Export, Media, which can also be done with Ctrl or Command M. I'm rendering to H.264 for YouTube, and I select my preset for this render. I covered all this rendering jazz in another video, and I'll place that link in the description below. Usually I would just click Q to render this to Media Encoder, but I'll just render it out now so you can see it. I click the Export button, it renders the audio edits, then the video. And no, that's not sped up, and I apologize for having 24 cores, 144 gigabytes of memory, and really fast SSD drives. The file is now rendered and ready to upload to YouTube. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. I don't know what the hell that means. I've also included some links in the description below to some excellent green and blue screen work for inspiration. You may not be shooting on a level, but I'm sure you'll learn something from it. And it should spark some ideas that you can use in your own productions. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. In this case, just realize the background so it looks like blah. So let me repeat this. Uneven leading. I'm going to use the not so awesome Ultra key found at Premiere Pro. As you know, trying to correct rotten footage in post. Another trick is to use a Magenta Gel. Notice I didn't say lighting. Edits it, does a compositing, renders it, and I use a sort of 3-point lighting system because this, the key light. And I've also included some links in the description below to some excellent and sound. The first major point of failure.